Innards, we are going to do a review and breakdown of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man episodes 9 and 10, starting now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I am Colin. So, Marvel just dropped their last two episodes of the first season of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Episode 9 is titled Hero or Menace. It is written by Jeff Trammell and directed by Liza Singer. Episode 10 is titled If This Be My Destiny, written by Charlie Neuner and Jeff Trammell, and it's directed by Stu Livingston. So my spoiler-free thoughts on these last two episodes is that there's a lot of big reveals. So I'm surprised that they have been able to keep a lot of these reveals under wraps for the duration of this first season of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. There's also a lot of setup that makes sense because the continuity of these storylines was very consistent throughout episodes 1 through 10. I really was impressed by the way that they built it up throughout these episodes and to make it a very compelling story overall. Many comic book characters are having their origin story moments. And then finally, there's a grander setup for season 2. Hopefully, the storytelling continues to be top-notch as we go along. Not really sure when they're going to drop season 2. Maybe they're able to get to a point where 1 year they'll do X-Men and then 1 year they'll do Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. That'll be a very good synergy in a lot of ways for Disney+. In terms of rating, episode 9, I would give it a 9 out of 10, which is a movie marathon. I think that the reveal in this episode is a well-earned payoff. Also, the boss fight is pretty epic because it has been building for a few episodes already. Makes the villain boss much more menacing than just a regular one-off type of thing. The setup for another villain is also very cool in episode 9. For episode 10, I give it a rating of a 10 out of 10, which is theater rental. I think that the twist is really good in this episode, and it's a very good callback to the first episode, which makes the whole run of watching these episodes even more worthwhile. The setup for one of the main villains is also very good here as well. And the side characters are beginning to have their own secrets that they are hiding from Peter, which gives it a very rich storyline as we move forward to a season 2. In terms of my season 1 thoughts of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, I would give it a 10 out of 10. I think it has been really enjoyable, rewatchable, especially with all the crossover characters, all the different characters that they have. They have 2 or 3 that are very solid all throughout from 1 through 10. And then the side characters that come into play, the cameos that come into play have really enlivened the story, made the story much more rewarding and also engaging to the audience. I like these episodes much more than the 90s Spider-Man animated series that you can find on Disney Plus as well. I've also never watched the more recent Spider-Man animated series. I've watched 1 or 2 episodes. I really didn't get into them that much because that was not associated with the MCU. If you'd like to hear more of what I have to say about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and other content we put out there, please like, share, and subscribe for more. We really appreciate your support, and we are growing on all of our social media platforms. So without further ado, spoilers ahead for episodes 9 and 10 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Let's start off with the previous episode because I got some nice images of it. This is the part in episode 8 where Doc Ock is trying to escape from his lab. He had this jazzy hands montage, and here you can see clearly the mechanical arms. This will be very significant for episode 10 later on, but the makings of the mechanical arms are in play at this point. We also see that there's an Iron Man cameo where Iron Man and General Ross captures Doc Ock, and basically Doc Ock is in jail. We start off with episode 9 of him being in prison, reading the Sokovia Accords, and basically complaining about the spell check, which was really funny. This scene was from episode 8 where Norman was going out for the benefit dinner and meets with General Ross, but he makes a visit with Doc Ock to tell him that he was the one responsible for his capture, and all of Doc Ock's designs now belong to Oscorp. So he's basically trying to consolidate power and try to put Doc Ock in a box. Basically, he's in a box right now in prison. And we will find out later on in this episode how Norman is trying to wield his power and to gain more influence within this universe. Back with Donovan and his 1/10 gang, these guys from the last episode were trying to go after the enhancements that Doc Ock made. They had a discussion with one of the Russians who knew where the location of those enhancements were, and they were able to steal a lot of those enhancements to fight against the Scorpions. We also see that Spider-Man has a change in his costume. At the end of episode 8, he was able to have the classic Spider-Man costume. We saw the Future Foundation one, which was pretty cool, but now he's really more sure of himself, much more identifiable to how he is as Spider-Man, and the new costume really reflects that new beginning for him. There's a gang war that breaks out between the Scorpions and the 1/10 gang. Spider-Man also saves Nico from the runaway truck and takes down the 1/10 gang during this time. Donovan, unfortunately, gets spooked and leaves the fight. This is a spot where there's a void in leadership, and Lonnie basically takes over the 1/10 gang. He already has the nickname Tombstone. At this point, it looks like this kid has become like steel because it broke Scorpion's stinger while he was fighting Scorpion. Spider-Man's also fighting Scorpion at this time, and there's a round 2, and Scorpion gets electrocuted during this fight scene. This is what I was talking about in the spoiler-free part, where there's a really huge arc between Spider-Man and Scorpion, where Spider-Man was really beaten up and defeated, and now you can see that there's almost like a redemption of him overcoming Scorpion and overcoming his fear of him. It really brings out a lot of the menace of Scorpion throughout these episodes. I think from episodes 6, 7, and 8, and now 9, it really makes him a very compelling villain. Here we see that after Lonnie was able to tag team with Spider-Man to defeat Scorpion, Scorpion then was able to drop a steel beam on Lonnie and basically opens up a lot of Peter's anger. Lonnie was able to stop Spider-Man from actually killing Scorpion near the end of this episode. We get to see that Nico then apologizes for not understanding Peter's perspective and just becoming more and more understanding about how he is and why he is the way that he is. And a very similar callback to this conversation where Nico and Harry were able to try to understand what Peter is all about. At the end of this episode, Norman is trying to still be a mentor to Peter, even though secretly he is trying to replicate Spider-Man's power from Peter's blood sample, which is a foreshadow most likely of the Green Goblin for season 2. So this is what I was talking about in the spoiler-free part of some of the things that might be happening in a season 2. That's how episode 9 ends. We start off with episode 10, where Nico stalls by presenting her diorama on photosynthesis, so Pearl and Peter doesn't have to go. Peter's doing Spider-Man stuff at this time, and Pearl, Peter, and Emma were able to present in time. Emma surprisingly did all the talking and was very informative on the concept of oxidation, and it's a very interesting callback because it seemed as though Emma did not know what she was doing, but Emma then ended up knowing everything, which was quite a surprise for the audience to see, because Peter's the one that's supposed to be the brains. Nico's supposed to have the brains as well, but it was this very distracted student who's probably unmotivated that happens to know everything and was able to earn the A, probably from the science presentation. Amadeus Cho, being the arrogant guy that he is, was presented with a 5.0 GPA. So, but we haven't really seen those just yet, but we know that he does become Hulk later on. Osborn is building a gateway to outer space using all the interns' projects. And this is a scene from episode 8, where he meets with General Ross about Sokovia and about the Mutant Registration Act. Doctor Strange then appears in the gateway and tries to stop the activation of the space portal, but fails. The Venom creature then returns. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man tries to attack it. Portal surprisingly takes them back to the beginning of episode 1, with Doctor Strange and the Venom creature finding each other, with the experimental spiders slipping through. So it becomes almost like what's called a bootstrap time paradox, where this spider is being experimented on by Norman Osborn and then goes back in time and bites Peter, which is very interesting on how Peter was able to get his powers. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man were able to destroy the space portal, but a piece of the symbiote ends up coming through. Norman then finds out the symbiote later on and then starts experimenting with it as we move along. Again, set up for potentially Venom and other seasons of crossovers and storylines. So Peter doubts that he can trust Oscorp again with all the shenanigans and also the space portal. So even though all the good that Norman has done for Peter, Peter feels as though he really needs to strike out on his own right now. While this is happening, Nico and Harry suggested that they start their own company of genius young people. They ended up naming the organization GIRL, which is Genius in Action Research Labs. So that's a pretty interesting play on words right there. And there's some name drops of individuals that were on the board: Max Dillon, Ned Leeds, Amadeus Cho, Asha for Wakanda, Jeannie, who's Finesse. And then there's some others that were name dropped: Scott Forbes, Leanne Dufour, Ty Miranda, who's part of GIRL, Emmy Choi, Priya Agarwal, who's also from GIRL, Benjamin Anders, Tony Sandoval, Tiberius Stone is the CEO of Viastone and a childhood friend of Tony Stark, Adam Rodney, Keaton Nix, who runs with X-23, Ripley Ryan, who is a human Kree hybrid, and Diane Jenkins. So there's probably some names that are in the credits, but also some names that might be of some comic book lore as well. Harry then sends some emails to look for investors in his new company, so it becomes like the Worldwide Engineering Brigade. Jeannie, aka Finesse, is working with Daredevil to infiltrate Oscorp. So this was teased when Spider-Man was fighting Daredevil, that there's some more sinister things that are going on. Lonnie becomes the new boss of the 110 Gang and establishes himself as Tombstone. Tombstone becomes a villain in the subsequent comic books, but we haven't seen the heel turn just yet. We might see it in a season 2. Nico also has a secret. As I mentioned, a lot of Peter's friends have secrets. And so we find out that Nico's mom is a dark wizard. Nico is also part of A-Force, so we don't know how that is going to transpire as we move forward. Doc Ock designs his technical arms while he's in prison. We saw a glimpse of that in episode 8. So he's trying to become one of the main villains of season 2. And then finally, we see that May visits Peter's father, Richard Parker, in prison. Now, we do not know why Richard Parker is in prison at this point, but there's definitely some family drama for season 2. So there's a lot of setup for season 2 in these episodes. We don't know how well the story is going to be constructed, but given what they have done in season 1, I think that I'm confident that they are going to be able to weave in a lot of these stories so that you're able to have something that's very coherent and consistent. And also, if there's a good buildup of the villains, as well as some complexities of dramas between family and friends that I hope that they're able to do in season 2. So those are my thoughts about episodes 9 and 10 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. What do you think of these episodes and also the season overall? You can comment down below, like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you in the next video. All right. Take care, everybody.